Welcome to the Prophecy Club. We're going to have Zen Garcia back with us today. As you recall, he's a webmaster, video producer, radio host, author of 7 books, ministry for 10 years. We had him on once before talking about Lucifer, father of Cain, his book, and today he's going to continue with some additional information. So, Zen Garcia, welcome back to the Prophecy Club.
Thank you, Stan. I appreciate the opportunity, and I've received a lot of feedback from your listeners and from those that were able to find the broadcast on YouTube or on the Prophecy Club website. And it seems to have blessed a lot of people and made them look again at what they thought they knew from the biblical revelations that are shared in Genesis chapter 3 and chapter 4. And the one question that I always receive from those is how I explain the King James Version rendition of Genesis chapter 4:1, which is that verse, and Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Because for most people, if they think they understand that from what it seems to say, they will automatically disregard everything else, like the prophecies contained in Matthew chapter 13, where Christ speaks about this as revelation for understanding the word, the opposition, the enmity of the goat and the sheep, the wheat and the tares, all those things that are played out throughout Scripture, the differences between Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, even David and Goliath, as this enmity between these two seed lines plays out through the entirety of Scripture. So I thought we would begin again just with a real quick review on Genesis 4:1 and then move into the consequences that are detailed in Genesis chapter 3 as to the consequences of Adam and Eve eating this fruit, and whether, if it were a literal fruit, how could it result in the consequences that are laid out there in Genesis chapter 3. Reviewing Genesis 4:1, the King James Version says, and Adam knew Eve his wife, the semicolon, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And I brought up in the first part of the show that we did out of the 5-part series, when we did the last review on all this, I talked about the Targums and how they were translations of the Aramaic translations of the original Hebrew Torah, and how they came to be utilized in the synagogues once the people came back from exile in Babylon, and how all these Targums seem to provide extra and detailed information on the veiled nature of some of the things that are written within the King James Version. And so looking just quickly at the Genesis 4:1 from the Palestinian Targum, it says, and Adam knew his wife Hava, who had desired the angel, which is a portion that is left out. And then there's a semicolon, and she conceived and bare Cain, and she said, I have acquired a man, the angel of the Lord. And she added to bear from her husband Adam, his twin, even Abel, which is spelled with an H there. And so if we look at the extra information that is provided, and Adam knew his wife Hava, who had desired the angel, her desiring the angel is what leads to, and she conceived and bare Cain. And she said, I have acquired a man from the angel of the Lord. And we know that in the King James Version, it just says, I have acquired a man from the Lord. And so her desiring the angel and her conceiving and bearing Cain, and that her receiving a man from the angel of the Lord. We know in the book of Job that when the sons of God are called to counsel, that Satan was found amongst them, and that he indeed is an angel of the Lord. And so if you look at the details that are added to this particular passage and what the semicolon, as far as marking the separation between the two clauses, her desiring the angel results in her bearing her conception and her bearing Cain. And she says, I have acquired a man from the angel of the Lord, which makes sense. And she added to bear from her husband Adam his twin, even Abel. There's even today in modern terms, it's called heteropaternal superfecundation, which means that a woman having sexual relations with two different men and having children from twins from both fathers. And that really Adam and Eve eating from the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Adam repeats the action, and the result of Adam repeating the action and knowing his wife Eve is that Abel is born, and that Cain, because we know that Cain is ill-natured, he's also called the murderer, he's a murderer, a liar, and a deceiver, and that Satan, or Lucifer, that he has those kind of qualities, and that Cain's inclination is after his father, which, if you understand this revelation, makes complete sense, and it helps us to understand why it is that Cain all of a sudden would, commit murder and lie to the Lord about having done so, which if he were the son of Adam doesn't make sense, because Adam is innocent in his nature, and nor does he have the nature or the inclination for these kind of behaviors. And so understanding that second part, and she added to bear from her husband Adam his twin, even Abel, helps us to understand that this is indeed what is going on in the garden parable, where it talks about Eve eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that the result of her having done so, that there's a sexual connotation involved with understanding this parable. For when we look at the actual consequences of the Genesis chapter 3 and the things that were laid out there, which I'll read here, it says, "Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, semicolon. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, semicolon. And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Now, if her eating of actually from a real tree, some kind of piece of fruit, whether it's an apple, a fig, or a pomegranate, how is it that it would result in her having sorrow and conception, and that she would bring forth children? It just does not make sense. But if you understand the garden parable in the revelation that we're speaking of today, and in what we did in the previous show, this absolutely makes sense. And it also speaks about, if we break down this particular passage, why is it that the Most High would reaffirm that her desire should be focused towards Adam and focused on her marriage, unless she had somehow had some kind of tryst or had her affection directed to somebody else? And it would make a lot more sense if the Most High were remarking upon her sexual liaison with the Nakash and was reaffirming and asserting to her that rather than adhering to Satan's sly word and being beguiled in such way, that she should concern herself instead with regard for her husband and her marriage. And so, looking again, as I said in that previous passage, "Unto the woman I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children." So if you understand that the consequences of her eating the fruit resulted in her being pregnant with Cain, and that would be the reason why she would bring forth children, but that she should focus, instead of being tempted by Satan and his sly words and gestures, that she should focus, rather her desire should be to her husband, and that he should rule over thee, rather than her, going off and running around with other beings, in this case, being Satan. And then the other thing is that Adam would have to work the soil in order to bring forth sustenance to feed his family, that the result of that would be that he would have future progeny, and that their loss of immortality and their bright nature, their falling from grace, being cast out, exiled from paradise, banished here to the earth, and that being transformed into flesh form is where all of these prophecies would play out and take place, in that she would give birth to Cain, who would be the first hybrid child of the devil, a scion of the serpent, the Nakash. And that Satan, speaking to Satan now, the Most High tells him that he would put enmity between her seed and thy seed, which again does not make sense if we're actually speaking about a literal tree and a fruit from some tree. Again, if you understand that this is veiled and that the reference is speaking about and denoting some kind of sexual connotation associated to the garden parable, then that makes sense. And if you understand that her having desired the angel resulted in her conception and giving birth to Cain, and that Cain was indeed the son of the serpent, all of the other things in the Bible, John chapter 8, the Most High, or Christ telling.
We'll be right back after this message. Let me read 2 Thessalonians beginning at 2:8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, then I'll skip down, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. It's saying that Satan is coming with power, signs, lying wonders, and a great deception. And then verse 11 says, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. I have to tell you, I thought this Error in the Church was going to be a really good series, but now that I have listened to 9 of the 10 DVDs, brothers and sisters, I have to say, if you want to keep your salvation, I'm going to say it that strong, okay? If you want to keep your salvation in the day of great delusion and deception, you better have got this 10 DVD set called Error in the Church. Now, why do I say it so strongly? I'm a pastor, okay? I grew up in church. I've started 3 churches, and yet I had no idea of some of this stuff. I'm going to say that if you don't get this, you could very well fall into the deception that is coming. I beg you, it is that good. Get this set. 10 topics: mysticism, New Age in the Christian Church, Kundalini Spirit, Chrislam, Seeker-Friendly, Emergent Church, Kingdom Now Theology, Hyper-Grace Movement, G12, Tazy Worship, False Christ, and What Else Is Wrong. 10 DVDs valued at $300. We're asking a pre-order gift offer of $180. Now, would you give $180 to know that you won't fall away? Guys, I mean, I have to say, it's that serious. Call Prophecy Club, 785-266-1112. 785-266-1112. Error in the Church. You'll be glad you did. In 1980, an angel came to Dmitri Duduman and told him that it is written in the Bible and that America will be defeated in 1 hour by Russia. I just made a brand new DVD covering all of the secular, real-life proof that Russia really is preparing to do exactly that. Topics are: Arise, Devour Much Flesh, Russia and Prophecy, Russia Now Rich and Strong, Russia's numerous military expansions, Ukraine, and how it is making the bear angry. Russia is warning the U.S., but we're not listening. Russia is building their military, modernizing submarines, aircraft, missiles, and their army, while the U.S. is downsizing and filled with traitors and weaknesses. 2.5 hours, gift of $30. Go to prophecyclub.com or call 785-266-1112. That's The Russian Bear Rises at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. Order today. And now, back to the program.
All of the other things in the Bible, John chapter 8, the Most High, or Christ telling the Pharisees that they are the seed of the serpent, that they're a den of vipers, how all these references fall into play, and they align with the Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the wheat and the tares, which we'll go into, and also with the enemy having snuck into the garden and sown the tares. We'll go into that here in just a minute, but this is the reason why, if Cain were the son of the serpent, the seed of the serpent, and Abel the firstborn son of Adam, and that after Cain murdered his half-brother, and it says in Genesis 4 that, and Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. Well, why would it emphasize begat a son in his own likeness after his image if both Cain and Abel were indeed the children of Adam, and that both of them were followed after the pattern and the image and the similitude of Adam? It makes greater sense, and we would understand why Genesis 4 verse 3 emphasizes that Seth is begat in his own likeness and after his own image, if Cain were indeed not a child of Adam's and not after his likeness and similitude, nor his nature, inclinations, and behavior patterns. And so that's why also we see that this particular verse, and Adam knew his wife Eve, from the Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, why it is that this verse is found at the beginning of chapter 4, when we see chapter 4 is a commentary on the lineage of Cain, and talks about the first 10 generations which lead up to the flood, and then the children and lineage and bloodline of Adam start in Genesis chapter 5, and they are listed in detail there in Genesis chapter 5, so that you have the seed of the serpent listed in Genesis 4, and the seed of the woman listed in Genesis chapter 5. And then the whole thing with Christ's lineage and how it speaks about this in Luke chapter 3, verse 23 through 38. It says, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. And there's nowhere mentioned in this particular passage Cain. If Cain were indeed the firstborn son of Adam, you would think that he would be listed in this particular passage.
Okay, let me just jump in here. Let me see if I'm playing this right. You're saying that Cain was fathered by Lucifer, and then you said that our understanding also of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was not exactly right, and you're saying that Abel is actually the son of Adam.
Right.
Right.
Right, and that Lucifer is the father of Cain, yes. And that would be the reason why we have in Genesis chapter 3, when the Most High is speaking to Satan as to what is going to happen now that he beguiled Eve, and that Eve ate from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, this fruit from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, why it is that there's going to be enmity between these two different seeds, and how it is that eating this fruit, in fact, really did result in two different seed lines being born, and how Eve is called the mother of all the living because she is the mother of both seed lines, but Adam is not regarded as the father of all living because he is not the father of Cain, and Cain was just his stepson.
Well, I do think it's interesting that Ishmael, the bad seed, came before Isaac, the good seed. Esau, the bad seed, came before Jacob, the good seed.
Right. Which I think that both of those accounts are also giving illustration and alluding to what happened in the garden and how it is that these, throughout all of history, as far as biblical history and the accounts in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, how they are linked to this enmity between these two different bloodlines and how it all plays out. Now, one other thing in regard to the lineage of Christ and how Cain is not included in that, there are two other accounts where the genealogy of Christ is listed, and if people look to the Cave of Treasures as well as the Book of the Bee, which are apocryphal or pseudepigraphal texts, extra biblical, extra canonical, but they also give a detailed accounting as to the genealogy of Christ, and in both of those accounts, Cain is not listed in the genealogy of Christ as well.
So your conclusion, in summary, is
that, in fact, what it's speaking about as Eve eating from the fruit, from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that this was an actual sexual act which resulted in the birth of both Cain and Abel as half-brothers, twins, and that they were from opposite fathers. And that this is where the enmity between these two seed lines began and would play out until Christ comes again, and how he spoke about this specifically in Matthew chapter 13. And he said that this knowledge was important and that even the many prophets and kings did not understand this as revelation.
Okay, so tell us why we should get your book, Lucifer, Father of Cain.
Well, I think the most important thing, even though this is not a salvation issue, is that it helps one to understand why we have the prevalence of evil in the world even today, and how it is that the New World Order elites, those that claim the divine right to rule, and that also understand this revelation and do not claim to be from the line of Adam, but know that they are from their father, the devil, and that they're ruling from behind the scenes, how all of this then falls into place and makes sense, and that it all bears again upon Matthew chapter 13, which we can go into in the next segment, which Christ speaks about and cites specifically in that passage to help us to understand this information so that we can understand the nature of the world that we're living in today, because a lot of prophecy was written for the final generation.
How's this tie in with the giants and with the Nephilim and also the UFO and the aliens of the end times?
All of that, too, is hinged upon the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, because the giants and the incursion of the Watchers was specific with the daughters of Cain, and that the giants are specific to the line of Cain and the seed of the serpent. That's why also we have the prophecy in Genesis 3:15 nipping at the heel and crushing the head, which we can also talk about that as well in the next passage. But all those things link to and are hinged upon this discernment and revelation. The Prophecy Club has exclusive rights right now to the second edition, the printing of Lucifer, Father of Cain, and that this particular edition includes 50 plus pages of additional information and revelation, which is linked to and connected to this as discernment. And so you can't find this information as far as the second edition anywhere else besides the Prophecy Club.
Okay, guys, if you'd like to get his book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, we ask a gift of $25 to help us continue on the radio, and you can get that by calling 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, type it in right now, 785-266-1112. You're going to order a Lucifer, Father of Cain, and if you want to give more than just the $25 donation, that would be much appreciated. And if you'd like to get it online, you can go to prophecyclub.com. Prophecyclub.com. Welcome to the Prophecy Club. We're going to continue talking with Zen Garcia today. He's a webmaster, video producer, radio host, and author of 7 books. And today we're going to be talking about his book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. Specifically, he's going to talk to us about how this ties in with Matthew 13. So, Zen Garcia, welcome to the Prophecy Club.
Thank you, Stan. Again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope that the programs we have done prior at least pique the interest of your listeners so that they would go to and revisit the information that is contained within the King James Version of the Bible so that they can see where we're coming from as in presenting this information and how it's important in understanding it so that you can understand what the Most High or what Christ is speaking about in Matthew chapter 13, which I think is one of the most important revelations that are connected to this as discernment. And we'll begin with verse 10 and 11, where the apostles ask him, "Why speakest thou unto them in parables?" And he answered and said unto them, "Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it is not given." And after speaking of a few more things as far as why it's important to understand this as information, he says, "For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear, and have not heard them." And this is Matthew chapter 13, verse 10 through 17, which sets the foundation for the parable of the sower and also the parable of the wheat and the tares, which we are about to go into. Because these two parables explain this as revelation and also tie it together with what happened in the garden with Eve eating fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In specific, we'll go into beginning with verse 24, where it says, "Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? And he said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go up and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them.
So you're saying that the father of Cain and all of that lineage down there was basically not the giants, but not just the Nephilim, but are literally the leaders of sin in our days today.
Yes, and that they are the tares. They are the seed line of Cain, which at the end of this show, we'll speak about two passages or two specific pieces of information that are exclusive to the second edition of Lucifer, Father of Cain.
Okay, and you got to explain how we jumped over the flood with that. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Go ahead.
We'll do that too.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay. And so continuing, an enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And so, Matthew chapter 13, verse 24 and 30. And so if we revisit this, the parable of the sower, this is the whole thing of what happened in the garden. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat. This is speaking about the beguilement of Eve, and that whatever Adam was doing, whether he was because some scriptures or some other extra biblical texts, they speak about Adam as being in a different part of the garden, tending the garden. Eve was left alone, and that the serpent, the Nakash, went up to her and, tempted her to eat from this fruit, which was the result was her beguilement. And in what we're laying out here, the discernment of which resulted in her being pregnant with Cain. So, but when the blade was sprung up, this is actually when the children were born and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So when the children were born to Eve, first Cain and then Abel, they understood that Cain was of a different nature. So there was something about him that, and it says in some of the other passages, that he was like the heavenly beings and not like the earthly beings. So there was something significant about him that made him immediately not like the regular children born, in this case, Abel first, and then with Seth.
Well, I do find it interesting that Cain complained to God and said, look, they're just going to kill me. And that's when he put a mark on Cain and told everybody not to kill him.
Right. Yeah, because there was something about him that was different. What that was is yet to be determined. Of course, we don't have the exact details on that, but there was absolutely something different. And this is, in my opinion, also why Genesis chapter 4, verse 3 speaks about Seth as being born in the similitude and the likeness of Adam. And so there's something to this. And so then the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? These are the children of the woman, the seed of Adam, because Abel was killed, which would be replenished with Seth. From whence then hath it tares? And so the Most High tells them, he said unto them, an enemy hath done this. And so the servants are the angels. And they go to the Most High and they ask him, how is it that this seed, this tare line, these evil, the seed of the serpent, ended up being upon the planet, in which in this case the garden, the field is the garden, the world. And where did the tares show up? How did they get to be there? And he says, an enemy hath done this. And so then they ask him, as the angels, wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you'll root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And then in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, those angels that he's going to send out to differentiate, to gather the tares for burning, and also the wheat for the barn. He tells us in the parable of the wheat and the tare exactly what he's speaking about as far as the enemy that sowed the tares, and that he says this without parable form.
Well, I think I need to point out here that a tare genetically is not wheat. Wheat is not a tare. However, the interesting part is, if you do a little study on this, and I have, they look exactly the same in the first 1/3 of their life, the middle 1/3 of their life, the last 1/3 of their life. They look exactly the same until the harvest, and then the wheat has fruit. It has seeds there, and the seeds causes the wheat to bend over, whereas the tares have very small seeds. They don't have fruit to them, and they still stand up. And that's the reason he says in the time of harvest, let's go gather first the tares. Literally, they did gather the tares of another DNA type because the farmer would walk through, because the tares were easy to spot. However, if they allowed just one tare to get in that wheat, the tare seed is extremely bitter and would ruin the flour that they want to make their bread with, okay? So they would go through and they would pull up all of the tares. Rather easy to pull them out because they stand up, you can see them. Then after they remove the tares, then they just mow down the wheat and gather it all into the barn.
Right. And I think also that there's a reason why the Most High created the wheat and the tare in the way that he did, and how I think it's also speaking about how the elites, that they're so proud and haughty that they would not bow down to the Most High.
Right.
That they are arrogant, just like Lucifer in his vanity. He wouldn't bow down to the Most High. He wanted to be as God himself. He wanted to rule. He couldn't be a servant to the Most High, but he wanted to be like the Most High.
Well, there is another parable to tie in there too. Okay, when they've gathered all of the wheat, they put all the wheat, and that's the leaves, the sticks, the straw, the all parts of the plant, in a big pile. Then they take a flail, which is two sticks tied together in the middle with like a piece of leather or something like that, and they flail the wheat. They beat the wheat, and that is a picture of the 7-year tribulation.
Right.
And the trouble, the beating of the wheat, separates the leaves and the twigs and the stalk from the wheat. So you got this big pile of the whole wheat plant all beat to pulp. So then they throw it in the air. If wind is blowing, then it blows away the wood, hay, and the stubble. The leaves, the sticks, the stalks, all of that blows away. It's light. And so they separate it, and they have a big pile of wheat, and then they literally gather the wheat into the barn. But the first thing they do is gather the tares, and then they put all the tares in a big pile, and they burn it. They want to make certain they get rid of all of those seeds from those tares. They don't want one seed to get into their flour, or it makes it bitter, very, very terrible tasting. Then they do the thing with the wheat.
Absolutely, and I think this is another confirmation from nature and the way that the Most High manifests creation as to exactly what we're talking about, and the differences between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. Going into the next part, where Christ is not going to speak to them in parable form anymore. This is after the multitudes are sent away, and he's going to speak to them plainly and tell them exactly what he's talking about, because they ask him specific, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. And again, this is after the multitudes are sent away. And he answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. Again, the whole thing with the parable of the sower, the field being the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one.
Just there it is.
Just as it says in John chapter 8, where he says that Cain was of the wicked one.
Wow.
And then just to make sure that we get it, and that we're talking about literal children here, physical children, seed of the serpent, are not just spiritual, but that they are absolutely physical. He says the enemy, which is again a reference to the enemy that sowed the tares in the parable of the sower, the enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, so that we understand that the wheat and the tares has to do with the enmity between these two seed lines for what would be the generation, the second world age, and the 6,000 years that we would be here until Christ's second coming. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, which is a reference to what you just laid out and spoke of in detail, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels. They shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Which is again a reference to those that understand this information, that can comprehend its the profundity which is connected to it, and how it is relevant to all of the other things that are laid out from Genesis to Revelation.
You know, God really showed you a revelation on this, didn't he?
Absolutely.
He opened up your spirit, and he pulled back the blinders, and you saw it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I've been trying to share this information with all those that would open themselves to new possibility.
Well, I've just been talking with another fellow, which we're also going to have on. This all ties together back with Genesis 6, the giants,
right,
which ties into the hybrids, which ties into the UFOs, which ties into the end times and the Great Deception and the Antichrist and all of that. The end is in the beginning, okay?
Exactly.
And what your book does is take them back to the beginning, peel the layers of the onion back so that they can see, look, guys, for you to understand the end, you have to first understand the beginning.
Right.
Correct?
And that the beginning is not just Genesis chapter 6, but that it goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3 and to Eve eating this fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that resulted in her giving birth to the first hybrid, which is this tear.
Now, did I catch you right? You don't believe that she ate from a plant?
No,
or a tree. You're saying that was actually sex with Lucifer.
Right. It resulted in her being pregnant with Cain and giving birth to what would be the first seed of the serpent.
Okay, now explain how that seed jumps over the flood. When God has specifically chosen 8 people to get through, would one of them still have some kind of dormant DNA in them? How do you jump over the flood with that?
This is an important revelation as well. And in order for us to gain some extra detail on this, we have to reference the book of Jasher. And so I'm going to read a passage which will set up the premise and help us to set a foundation for what we're going to be talking about in this and how it was that Cain and the Cain line and the lineage of Cain, how they were allowed continuance through the flood of Noah's day.
Let me set up Jasher. Guys, if you haven't read this book, in my opinion, it's like Maccabees. It's like some of the other extra biblical books. If you read it, you can tell that it is not inspired. It's not actually spoken by God. It is a history book. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, though. It just means that God didn't author it. But it may very well be that some of these, like the book of Enoch, many of those were authored by great men of God. It's just that it's not the direct word of God. Is that the way to explain it?
Yes, absolutely. And it is mentioned in the holy text.
Right.
It's mentioned
within
the scripture, in the canon.
Right.
And so, yes, that's a good way to speak about it. And so we're going to go to a passage in Jasher chapter 5 where it says this: Noah, the son of Lamech, refrained from taking a wife in those days to beget children, for he said, Surely now God will destroy the earth, wherefore then shall I beget children? And Noah was a just man, he was perfect in his generation, and the Lord chose him to raise up seed from his seed upon the face of the earth. And the Lord said unto Noah, Take unto thee a wife, and beget children. For I have seen thee righteous before me in this generation, and thou shalt raise up seed, and thy children with thee, in the midst of the earth. And Noah went and took a wife, and he chose Naamah the daughter of Enoch. And she was 580 years old, and Naamah conceived and bare a son. He called his name Japheth, saying, God has enlarged me in the earth. And she conceived again and bare a son. And he called his name Shem, saying, God has made a remnant to raise up seed in the midst of the earth. And Noah was 502 years old when Naamah bare Shem. And the boys grew up and went in the ways of the Lord in all that Methuselah and Noah their father taught them. All right, so here we have the whole passage of, the Most High tells Noah to take a wife. He takes Naamah as his wife. Then in this particular passage, it speaks about the children which are born unto Noah and his wife Naamah, and that they went the ways of the Lord, and they grew up in all the things that Methuselah and Noah, their father, had taught them. All right, we understand all that. But what is not referenced, first off, is that it does not speak about the birth of Ham, and that Ham would be a son to Noah and to Naamah. And we know that Naamah is listed, or a Naamah is listed as the sister of Tubal-Cain in Genesis chapter 4, which is, again, a reference and cites in detail the lineage of Cain from Cain all the way to Tubal-Cain, the children of Lamech, which are the 10 generations which lead to the flood. And that in Genesis chapter 5, it lists in detail the lineage of Adam, and it remarks on Adam to Noah. And then, after that, it goes on into how the planet was repopulated.
Okay, so you're saying Ham was not the son of Noah's wife Naamah. It was the son of someone else.
Right.
And so the seed could have got in through that direction.
Right. And so what I'm speculating on is that Naamah, which is listed here as the daughter of Enoch, first, this Naamah is not the sister of Tubal-Cain, because Enoch in Cain's line is the firstborn son of Cain. It goes from Cain to Enoch and then continues. And so if Naamah were the daughter of Cain, she would be very much older than Noah. And so, but if we understand that the Naamah, speaking of, because it says in this particular passage that Naamah was the daughter of Enoch. And so if we understand that this Naamah was actually the daughter of Enoch, who was the son of Yared, and it was during the time of Yared that the Watchers came, then she would be very close in age to Noah, who was the son of Methuselah. And so understanding that first, and that this particular passage references that the first two children, Japheth and Shem, that they were born from Naamah and Noah, but that nowhere is mentioned that Ham was the son of Naamah or Noah. And it's my speculation, and Dr. Joy writes about this. She's got some additional information in her third book, Beguiled, which is all about the two bloodlines and the lineage. She talks about how Noah took a second wife, and that it was through this second wife that Ham, when it speaks about he had seen the nakedness of his father, that those references are actually talking about that he had fornicated with his mother, and that the result of that was the birth of Canaan. And that we know Noah, after it speaks about, Ham having seen the nakedness of his father, that Noah cursed Canaan and made them to be servants unto the line of Shem and the priesthood. And this is the same thing that happened during the time of Joshua, when the Kenites said that they were from a far off people and that they had come from a far away, and he made a pact with Joshua, and the princes had promised not to kill them, but then when Joshua found out who these people were, he made them servants unto the priesthood.
So this line of the devil has been there since the very beginning.
Very beginning.
It made it through the flood, and it's going to make it right until the end of the harvest, just like Matthew 13 says.
Right. And the reason...
that's a real revelation. It is. That's really important. Guys, I really think it's important that you get this. As a matter of fact, we're running out of time. Quickly tell them about your book.
Okay, well, first, know that this information and some of the things that we can go into in another part, that this is all exclusive in the second edition, which is being offered through the Prophecy Club. That all of the other Lucifer, Father of Cain's books that are being sold on Amazon and other places are not the second edition. So you do have to get these through the Prophecy Club in order to get this additional information. And again, I think it's just absolutely important and critical, and that's why Christ emphasized this in Matthew chapter 13 as being a revelation. He says, I will utter things that have been hidden since the foundation of the world, and how all this is important to us as the fig tree generation in order to understand those things which have been laid out in the entirety, the full foundation of the canon, both Old and New Testament, and that the beginning was not Genesis chapter 6, but Genesis chapter 3, and that the end is, again, when the reap.
785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, type the word in here, type the numbers in, 785-266-1112. Lucifer, Father of Cain. We ask a gift of $25 or more. Help us out with the radio airtime. You can give more than the $25. 785-266-1112. Find out how the seed of Satan is going to make it all the way from Adam to the harvest. They're going to be there when Jesus returns. 785-266-1112. Father of Cain. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers. And thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now, he's written this awesome book called Lucifer, Father of Cain. He's about to explain to you how the Nephilim, how the hybrids, how the seed of Lucifer is going to make it all the way to the harvest. If you hadn't caught the other programs before this one, go to prophecyclub.com. You can listen to all of the programs going back a couple of years. That's prophecyclub.com. So, Zen Garcia, welcome back to the Prophecy Club.
Well, thank you, Stan. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that your listeners are being benefited in some way with the knowledge that we are presenting, and that it is blessing their lives, and that hopefully they are doing as we ask them, not to not believe us, but to go and to look at it again for themselves and take it before the Father and the Son and ask them to confirm this as revelation for them. And I think if they do that, that it will lead to the confirmation which the Most High also led me to, which I will now lay out for you, and that this is also the difference as far as the edition that is being offered through the Prophecy Club, because I did revisit the original manuscript and add abundance of new information to this second edition, and that right now exclusively it is offered through the Prophecy Club. I'm going to speak about two very important pieces of information that are found in this edition that are not available in the others, and why it is that people would, want to get the second edition, even though the first one can stand on its own and there's a lot of great information in it. I think the second one is absolutely superior.
Guys, I really think as prophecy students, we need to understand, because all the way back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Lucifer sowed his seed. That seed, he'll tell you, made it past the flood. He'll explain to you how it did, and you'll understand it. And it's going to go all the way to the end of the harvest as the tares. It ties in with the Nephilim. It ties in with UFOs, ties in with the Antichrist. And it is all started right there at the tree. And I believe God has shown him a revelation, and I think you will have your mouth drop open as you read this book saying, wow, he's right. I see it. He's right. Again, it's Lucifer, Father of Cain. You get it at 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone. I'll give it to you again, 785-266-1112. prophecyclub.com. Okay, so tell us what is in this brand new edition that is not in any of the other editions.
The first thing that I want to share with everybody is that after I published Lucifer, Father of Cain, the first edition, in April of 2010, the Most High led me to something that confirmed the whole premise of that work, and which people will be able to confirm this for themselves. And it has to do with this website called BibleCodeWisdom.com, which is a Bible code program that allows you to search in English the first 5 books, the Torah, the Pentateuch, and to look for anything as far as Bible codes which would be relevant to a particular topic and subject. And so I decided to see if I could find something in the Bible code which is connected to the revelation of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil actually being something that was veiled as far as the sexual connotation, and that it is connected to Cain as being a seed, a tare, and a child of the devil. And so I went to BibleCodeWisdom.com, typed in the search bar the following keywords. And the first one was goat, G-O-A-T. The next one, Esau, E-S-A-U. The next one, Cain, C-A-I-N. The next one, devil, D-E-V-I-L. The next one, son, S-O-N. The next one, seed, S-E-E-D. The next one, fruit, F-R-U-I-T. The next one, tree, T-R-E-E. And the next one, tare, T-A-R-E, which for those that have looked for and tried to find Bible codes on your own using the various programs that are out there, you will understand that these are a lot of keywords, and that a lot of Bible codes only have 2 or 3 keywords, and that you will find maybe 1 or 2 matrices which are connected to them as far as if they're contained within the Bible codes. And so when I hit enter and having typed in these particular keywords, I was surprised to find that this particular Bible code, not only was it found encrypted within the Bible code over the Torah, but that it was actually found 7 different times. And that it begins, the 7 matrices are on top of specific passages beginning with Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, and that it goes through the first matrix to Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, which we know that this is where Eve was beguiled by the Nakash, and that she ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so it was interesting to me that indeed there was a Bible code that was found, not only 1, but 7 of them, and that the first one begins with where we find in Scripture that Eve was beguiled by the Nakash and actually impregnated with the firstborn son of the devil, Cain. And so the first 2 matrices are found Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 through Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. The third matrix is over Deuteronomy 33, verse 8 through 16. The fourth matrix is found over Psalm 133, verse 10 through 17. The fifth matrix over Luke chapter 8, verse 10 through 19. The sixth matrix over Luke chapter 8, verse 12 through 19. And the final, the seventh matrix, is over Ephesians 6, verse 2 through 16, which is, again, mind-blowing, because Ephesians chapter 6 is a well-known scripture speaking about the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places, and how our battle is not against flesh, but these particular spiritual powers. And so, to me, it was mind-blowing to not only find this matrix in the Bible code, but to find them overlaying Genesis chapter 3 and then also Ephesians chapter 6, as well as the other particular passages, which in this new edition, the second edition, I break down and I show with photos the exact matrix and how they line up and the particular way that they line up, and also I comment on why it is I believe that they were found over these particular parts of the original Torah. Another thing that I thought was of interest as far as these matrices is that they were found 7 times, and that we understand, those that understand that, the Hebrew words, the letters, that they also have numerical meaning, and that the number 7 denotes completion. That, just like the Sabbath, that 7 also speaks about the 7 days of creation, and that the 7th day was a day of rest, and that it also is connected to the 7 complete colors of the spectrum of the rainbow and the 7 notes of a musical scale, and how 7 has a lot of connotations as far as being and showing completion in the manifest creation. And so you can go and look this up for yourself and confirm this as revelation and see how it plays out specific when you search these particular keywords: goat, Esau, Cain, devil, son, seed, fruit, tree, and tear, which I chose those particular keywords because of their connection to not only Cain and Esau being from the tear line, and that they are, the seed of the serpent, but the goats and the tares, which is, again, the differences between the wheat and the tare and the goat and the sheep. The devil is in there, son, seed, fruit, tree, tear. All of those are, again, keywords that are connected to the Genesis 3 revelation once you understand it and have this particular discernment that, in fact, what happened when Eve ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that it is actually speaking about her beguilement by the Nakash and her giving birth to Cain, who was the hybrid son of the devil, and that he was only the stepson of Adam, and that he was the half-brother of Abel, and that the enmity, again, began there. And then the next particular confirmation is kind of interesting because it talks about what the elites themselves think as far as their being children of the tares, and how it was an alert that was shared and released on Steve Quayle's website. And the actual, how this came about is that there was a geneticist that talked about how he inherited a study.
We'll be right back after this message. Today, we're making 3 DVDs available for a gift of just $25. The first one by Augusto Perez, End of Times. Topics are the Great Shaking, the Coming Famine, the Glory Cloud, the Coming Attack on the United States, the Great Darkness, the Super Devaluation of the Dollar, the Double Portion Outpouring, and how God will protect His own. Then, the Coming Pole Shift by Lloyd Carpenter. The Bible says that earthquakes will increase and the earth will turn upside down. Lloyd has studied the coming pole shift for over 20 years, and he says it is coming. And the topics are the earth's wobble, earthquakes, tsunamis, weather pattern changes, tornadoes, hurricanes, mudslides, floods and droughts, volcanoes, plate tectonics, seafloor spreading, hot spots, melting ice in the ring of fire, subduction zones, the scientific rationale for a pole shift, the Pacific Ocean and plate tectonics. Have earthquakes dramatically increased in the last 10 years? How does the Earth's rotation affect earthquakes? And John Moore, in Signs in the Sun, Moon, and the Stars, gives you a fascinating presentation using biblical, archaeological, scientific, and privileged government information to show you what is beginning to cause cause these signs in the sun, moon, and the stars. John proves the signs have already begun and will grow in intensity. He was an intelligence analyst for the U.S. Army and now a homicide detective and radio host. He has been investigating Earth changes since 2000 and has some startling discoveries. John has proof there is a mystery planet heading toward our solar system, which is causing ice caps to melt, stopping the Gulf Stream, causing tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, extremely hot and cold weather. He says the governments of the world know about it and they're preparing underground survival facilities. Included in this presentation is a classified map showing safe locations. It's the catastrophes in Bible prophecy gift offer. End of times, Augusto Perez. Coming pole shift, Lloyd Carpenter. Signs in the sun, moon, and stars, John Moore. Valued at $90, all available for a gift of just $25. Call 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. That's catastrophes in Bible prophecy gift offer. End of times, coming pole shift, signs in the sun, moon, and stars. All for a gift of $25. And now, back to the program.
That talked about how he inherited a study from one of his friends who was murdered as a result of being hired by one of these elites to confirm whether there was a difference between the children of Cain, which the elites in what I'll read and what he was told, that the individual that hired his friend told him that they are taught by their tutors and by their bloodlines and by their fathers and grandfathers that there is a genetic anomaly, that there is a difference between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, and that the children of Cain have 3-strand DNA, and that the children of Adam have 2-strand DNA. And so he wanted to find out whether there was any relevance to what he had been taught by his family bloodline, and whether there was any indeed DNA markers or any anomalies genetically which verified them, the seed of Cain or the seed of the serpent, as having 3-strand DNA. And so I'm only going to read the most relevant parts as to this particular information. I think it's critical in that it gives us a window into the perspective of the elites and what they are taught themselves by their particular bloodline. And so, again, this individual that is going to be commenting now inherited the research from his friend who was murdered to keep this information hush-hush and on the down low, and that even the Illuminati member, the person from this particular bloodline, he was also suicided and murdered to keep this information from going forth, and that they were trying to keep this all covert and hidden from we as the sons of Adam. And so it says this. In his notes, my friend pins some personal thoughts after having considered his observations and the source of his DNA materials. On the plane ride back stateside, my friend, who at the time was one of the most knowledgeable DNA researchers on the planet, pulled out the biggest piece of mental jerky that I've ever gnawed on. His benefactor, test subject, believed that while most of the sons of Adam had double-strand DNA, that he had been told by his family that he and his blood relatives were distinctly different, and that he, like his fathers before him, had triple-strand DNA. He wanted my friend to secretly prove once and for all if this was true or not. The subject claimed that his extended family and their cousins, who are kings, queens, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, that they believe they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. He'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time his ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity, think about the war in heaven, in the time before the garden. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. He was torn to know if that a child of Cain was actually genetically different and whether he could be, quote unquote, saved. He thought of the Vatican's pronouncement that the aliens are our cousins and the Vishnu teachings of a time when gods flew in spaceships and destroyed whole cities in a single blast. He even had notes about Elijah being caught up in a chariot of fire. Maybe he had misread or misunderstood the entire history of his Bible. Maybe from Genesis to Revelations, it was about some far more tangible and real fallen angel alien cousins than the ghost-like destroying angels that he'd always pictured in his imaginations. It only matters what they believe because our original subject and his relatives, who are kings, queens, princesses, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, they believe and act as though they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. But not only human, hybrid human, more than human, superior alien human. Our subject and his kin had been taught by their families and tutors that once upon a time their ancestors had fallen to the earth. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam, and they believed that our humanoid cousins, they are superior, hybrid, half alien, and only half human, and that they once reigned from Olympus as pharaohs and were pharaohs, and whatever the real truth of their history, their belief is the driver of their actions. Being the true believers they are, they will continue to operate in accordance with their belief and the laws of alien Darwinian type survival. That's why they interbreed, to maintain the purity of their bloodline. That's why they secretly meet and connive to pass power between themselves, and that's why they must fool the rest of mankind into wars of self-destruction and debt, so that we may be forever enslaved to their lust on this prison planet till death do us part. More than afraid, they know in their hearts that this is a fight for survival. It had begun, just as my friend had said, as a murder investigation, starting with the first murder when their Luciferian demon dad whispered of the evil deed to his willing child, Cain. It continued down through time, the sons of Adam fighting for survival, destroying the alien giants in Canaan land, David and the hybrid Goliath, his 4 hybrid brothers, and all the hidden true believers since, hiding in plain sight, so powerful, so important, but so afraid. These earthbound half-covens of ours continue to laugh, but it is a nervous laugh at that, as they have a joke or two at our expense, recreating their lying father's fall to earth and flashing their heretofore secret gang signs, secret society hand signs to each other right in our face. I know how dangerous their beliefs are because they are being driven by their beliefs, taught to them by their real alleged father, the father of lies. And even now, he knows the truth and whispers in his initiate's ears, just as he did in Cain's ear, the sons of Adam, as long as they live, they are dangerous.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a wow. Okay, you're going to send me that text in an email because I got to put that in some presentations myself. And,
I'd be glad to.
And guys, all of this he's been talking about is in his new book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. Grab your cell phone right now, 785 785-266, put it in, 785-266-1112. 785-266-1112. You're going to hit send, and you're going to call and order that book. And yes, we ask a donation of $25 or more, but you're going to help us with some airtime. You're going to give even more than the $25. Probably there's been other times when you've listened, and maybe you need to do a little catch-up here. 785-266-1112, 785-266-1112, 785-266-1112, Lucifer, Father of Cain. Or go to prophecyclub.com, prophecyclub.com. Now, in a couple of minutes, tell us why we need to get your book, Lucifer, Father of Cain.
Again, it goes back to the revelation that is contained within the Bible, the canon of the Old and New Testament, which many people have been reading and studying for decades, multiple decades, but that unless you have this revelation, this discernment as skeleton key to unlock all of the other things which hinge upon this as revelation, the Bible just does not make sense in the way that it should, and of which Christ was speaking about when he said, I will utter secrets, things that have been hidden since the foundation of the world. That this is the secret that he was speaking about and referencing to, and that as a skeleton key, it unlocks the entirety, the full summation of the biblical text, Old and New Testament, the battles between these two bloodlines as they played out, even with what is referenced in this passage, with the enmity between Cain and Abel, the children and lineage of Cain, to that of Seth, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, the Pharisees and Christ. All these things are totally dependent upon this as revelation, and that once you understand it and you read the gospel, it will read in the way that it's supposed to, and that the things that have been veiled since, again, the foundation of the world will present themselves to you in new light, and you will be blessed with greater understanding.
785-266-1112. 785-266-1112. Get your cell phone, type it in, 785-266-1112, and you're going to order Lucifer, Father of Cain. Or go to prophecyclub.com, prophecyclub.com, Lucifer, Father of Cain, 785-266-1112, or prophecyclub.com. Now, in the meantime, Zen Garcia, wow, you have peeled our eyeballs totally open and helped us to see something we've never seen before. Thank you very much, and thank you for being on the Prophecy Club.
Thank you, Stan. I appreciate the opportunity, and I just pray that it can help your listeners and readers to understand the gospel in the way that I think the Most High, the Son, and the patriarchs of old wanted us to understand.